EAFC has been basically unplayable for weeks now. Even though the most recent updates made basically no mention of adjustments to the gameplay, matches have been unmistakably more chaotic and unfortunately more predictable. The CPU rinses the same impenetrable shield dribble attacks over and over again. Every tackle you make rebounds straight back to a CPU player. And even the refereeing logic seems to have taken a turn for the worse. And I tried everything to get the game playing well again. I switched to world-class difficulty, I tried fast game speed, and I even thought about turning the assists back on. And with barely 2 weeks between the release of Title Update 13 and 14, it's clear that EA knew that they'd messed the game up and they'd rushed out a new update to try and fix it. And thankfully they do seem to have fixed it. The game isn't perfect, and it's not even in the best place that it's been this season, but the gameplay is at least back to a playable place again. Before we get into the sliders themselves, there are one or two settings that I want to touch on. Firstly, referee strictness should be set to default. I've had it on strict for most of the year, but referees are now far too eager to show cards, and particularly red ones, so this needs to be dialed back. Secondly, recommended half length is still 10 minutes, recommended difficulty is still legendary, and the game speed should still be set to default. And I do just want to share my camera settings since I do get so many questions about those in the comment section of videos. So I use the EA Sports Game Cam for my career mode videos, but I have the height set to 5, I have the zoom set to 15, same for the far side focus, set that to 15, ball tracking speed on 0, and then penalty area zoom on 12. The rest is pretty much default, and I make sure that I have the power shot zoom off. As for the sliders themselves, this set is basically a combination of version 3 and version 4. And this set is likely subject to change as I get more and more familiar with the latest iteration of the gameplay over the coming weeks. This is version 5.0, but if you want to be in the loop for version 5.1, 5.2, etc., make sure you join my Discord, which is linked in the description below, as I won't be releasing a new video for each of those smaller tweaks. So the user sliders should be as follows. Sprint speed and acceleration remain at 5 and 50, which is where they've been all year. Shot error is at 48, but pass error moves all the way down to 15. As usual, this standard version is designed for use with full manual controls, so check out the assisted version later in the video if you don't use manual, because these error sliders will need to be much higher. Shot speed and pass speed should be at 48 and 36 respectively, and I'm currently on 85 and 17 for injuries, but these sliders continue to be basically useless. Goalkeeper ability is at 58 for the user, whilst marking moves back to 50. Run frequency is still at 15, but you want to move line height to 58, length to 42, and width to 48. This is one of the most important things to get right for any slider set, as it dictates the entire shape of the game. 58 is a value we haven't used yet this year, but when combined with the line length, it seems to be a good balance between creating a dynamic and congested midfield while still allowing players to break through the lines once in a while. This is something that the previous updates really affected. Games were far too end-to-end, players ran through on goal far too easily, so this should help with that significantly. Fullback positioning stays at 20, and power bar, as always, is personal preference. And then the final thing that's making a big difference to this particular set is the first touch control error, which you want at 25 for the user. This slider is basically like a hidden difficulty tuner. If you want the game to be slightly easier, decrease this for the user and increase it for the CPU. If you want the game to be slightly harder, do the opposite. This slider affects things like tackle success, who ends up with loose balls, how strong your players are in jockey or shoulder tackle situations, and more. It's not just a case of how good a player's first touch is, like the name suggests. As for the CPU, again, you want 5 and 50 for sprint speed and acceleration. Shot error should also be at 50, but pass error should be at 48. Shot speed should be likely lower than the user at 46. But pass speed matches the user at 36. The injury sliders are the same as the user too, as is line height, length, and width, but you want goalkeeper ability down at 32. Run frequency needs a bump up to 30 to encourage more chances for CPU teams, especially since we've adjusted those line values to create a more congested midfield. Fullback positioning can be at 50. But you want to set first touch control error also to 50. 25 and 50 feels like a good balance to me. It's nowhere near as frustrating as it was previously, where the CPU players just end up with the ball almost no matter what. But instead, lucky bounces seem to go both ways now. But feel free to play around with these values. If you're finding the game too hard, leave the CPU at 50 but drop the user to 5. If you're finding it too easy, just reverse the values, and don't be afraid to try extreme values either. These were set to 5 and 100 for several months, and that was the right balance at the time. So play around with it and see what works for you. So here is the slider set in its entirety. Feel free to pause here if you do want to input these real quick, but I'll put them down in the description as well. Now, I know some people find this set a little bit too easy, so as always, I have created a harder version of this set if you want to test yourself against the CPU a little bit more. A number of the values remain the same as in the standard set, but you are going to see more challenge in terms of the errors that you have to overcome. The shot speed and the pass speed have been reversed in this set. The goalkeeper abilities have been adjusted slightly. And then importantly, there are those disparities in terms of the first touch control error, this time with the advantage given to the CPU. So user first touch control error should be at 50, whilst the CPU is just down at 5. Again, feel free to pause and input these sliders, but I will put them down in the description below as well. And finally, I know there are plenty of people that don't enjoy playing with full manual control, so of course I have created a version of this slider set that you can use with assists as well. So again, this time a lot of the values are going to be the same as in the standard set, but the thing that you'll mostly notice is that the errors are much higher for both shot and pass errors, so those should be at 78 and 72 respectively. The shot and pass speed might have been adjusted slightly as well, if I remember correctly. And then again, the first touch control error, of even those out at 50-50 for both the user and the CPU. So as I've been saying, feel free to pause the video, but these assisted sliders will be down in the description as well. So there you have it. Apologies that it's been so long in the making, but I only like to release slider sets when I'm really happy with the version and when I would be happy to implement the sliders in my own career modes. As I said, this isn't the final set, but the main values are pretty much there, and it is at least going to be a good foundation that we can tweak and refine going forward. So I hope this set gets the game back to a decent place for you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy.